So now we are closing this up. So I said in the introduction, we did this thing 4 years ago that was called the People's Roadmap to a Digital New York City. We were able to outline a community values document and a community manifesto. Out of that generated 34 different policy ideas. A handful of them were turned into legislation, about 14 of them. 9 of them were actually passed as pieces of legislation that have strengthened our city's open data program. And so we are revisiting that document this year. It's our community master plan, as some of the planners like to talk about. And then we have, yeah, please bring out the boards. Bring out the boards! The boards are going to have your brains on them. So we have been going through, I think we've hit we've done Staten Island, oh my goodness. So we have done roadmap listening sessions in 4 of the 5 boroughs. So we've been Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, and Staten Island. Believe it or not, we got Staten Island in before we got to the Bronx. We got, you know, and we've had some really amazing partners from Cardo, Coalition for Queens, Civic Hall, College of Staten Island's the tech incubator there, and we're essentially trying to generate an understanding and a community process to revamp our values and goals, as well as think about like what is the future of civic tech over the next 4 years. What are the policies, programs, ideas, and concepts that we essentially want to advocate for, right? And so we have Julia, Irina, and Ben, who's been are going to be scribing your ideas. And so when I say brains, this is where we are doing the community education or the community collaboration process. So it doesn't matter if somebody else has already said it. We want to hear the things that you heard today that you think we should be fighting for over the next 4 years. Does that make sense? Yeah, so this is kind of that Quaker inspirational moment. So I'm going to get off this stage and start roaming. Who has something to say that they found really inspirational today, that they think is something that BetaNYC and the civic tech, open data, and the civic design community should be fighting for the next 4 years? Affordable housing, okay. Yeah. So, yes?
Helping small businesses with technology. I was half part from the White House. I was part of the White House Business Council. They did an event, White House briefing. Without technology, the businesses, especially the one that I have, which is research, they don't use it if you don't have the technology. So if you go into a strategic alliance, the big fish always eat the small one.
Great.
So I'm going to see the commissioner soon, and the First Lady is going to be at an event. And I want to, just give an advice. We need the technology, so they should concentrate on small businesses also.
So, okay, great. Well, that's fine. So, just to kind of illuminate a little bit of I should talk about the different areas that we're looking at. So, the first one is over here on the left is industry, employment, and economic mobility. So we have smarter communities, which is integrating technology with community needs. Oh, there's little things that Lauren put these two together. And Irina cut them out. So industry, employment, and economic mobility, and Julia, access to tools and resources that provide people the ability to earn a living wage and engage in meaningful work. Smarter communities is integrating technology with community needs. Accessible infrastructure is access to affordable wired and wireless bidirectional high-speed internet access, though I would say we should be putting LoRaWAN on there, so we need high-speed and low-speed internet access. Effective and open government communities is how do we make transparent, efficient, and participatory government? And I'm going to trip over something if I don't. And then education and lifelong learning, which is the unprecedented access to knowledge and learning opportunities. And so we've heard if you could try to localize your inspirational thoughts that you've heard of the day into these things, or you can try to do that first, and then if you got something else, just go ahead and say it.
More business incubators.
More business incubators.
All of them fits in that strategy.
Great.
All of your
Great. Well, we've had these three people. Yes, Devin.
Government services made accessible in the open referral format via some type of API.
Government services. Say that again.
Government services accessible in the open referral service data format, which is an open data standard for service, health, human, social service information. So if the government could make that available using that data standard, then it would be really easy for all of the tech people to make apps to help people find the services to which they're entitled.
Great. That's something that we were advocating in the original roadmap, which was for greater adoption of open standards. So, wait, hold on. I have this thing that the internet, it's called the internet.
Super quickly, just to briefly talk about that. So I volunteer with BetaNYC, but I'm also working at NYC Opportunity with the Civic Service Design Studio and the product line there. And we actually are working on an open API with a rules engine and program benefits and information. And that is something that we've been working on for the past few months and should be out in the next few months.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, a round of applause for that. Government at work. So who has some other inspirational? Who was up at Hack Hall? How many of you went up to the Hack Hall? Okay. So did you see some interesting projects up at Hack Hall that can be distilled to things that we should be fighting for?
I won't deny with that. But what interested me was Sunlight Foundation actually trying to create metrics around how well cities are doing in opening up their data models and creating a sort of crowdsourced, how is each city doing and versus, across a whole pile of categories. And that was really neat.
So
Accountability.
Okay, so a greater accountability within the New York City Open Data Program, maybe something this is the people's roadmap for us to be fighting for here in New York City, within New York City. So metrics, more detailed metrics of holding agencies accountable in New York City. All right, anybody else? Yeah.
The consensus building workshop, where we role played how Taiwan is basically making rules and legislation, was really awesome and could be used to help build smarter communities and more effective open government by just adopting some processes and good facilitation.
So the V-Taiwan process, the participatory policy process that is baked into the V-Taiwan framework, have that instituted here in New York City. Yeah. V as in Victor. Feeling the spirit. Oh, I'm feeling it. It's over here, and it's over here, and it's over here.
Mandated use of open source software in government.
Okay. Yeah. There should be a GitHub repo for just about every public website, that the city produces, right? If you're getting public information, there should be you should be able to fork or at least put an issue queue on that. So. I love nightmares. There's the things that I dream in nightmares. All right, who's got other inspirational ideas? No, nothing. No one attended Emily Goldman's session around BoardStat and having BoardStat go out to all 5 boroughs. What?
So I would like to see more transparency from the community boards. So I think BoardStat is great for community boards to understand their district, but I think it's very hard for districts to understand the community board. And I think there's a lot of data that could be made available there.
Oh, wait, whoa. The internets have to hear you, David.
Thanks, Noel. That was a whole elaborate production. So a really cool development was last year, the New York City Council released an open API of its legislative information. And that in turn is what's powering the new council website that's for tracking laws and looking at what the council is doing. But that information is now available for developers to remix. So if you want a really customized neighborhood level alert about what your council member is doing for your issue community, you can now remix that with open data, which is great.
I think I can add on to that. So instead of us pulling information from city council, they should be pushing information to us. So, great. Wait, where is it? I feel it someplace over here. Come on, Phil, you've had questions in every single panel over here. You have nothing to say, nothing to add that we should be doing in here in New York City?
I mean, I guess, expand the uses of 3-in-1 to not just be complaining, but to offer solutions.
And I would add to that any state authority that does work in New York City, whether it's NYCHA or whether it's Battery Park City, Roosevelt Island, all of those state authorities should be put into 311. So if you're a New York City resident in one way, shape, or another, you should be able to use 311 to make a service request, whether or not you are kind of related to a state authority or not.
One thing that came up earlier was the sort of collapse of local community news sites, and obviously we all know about the old Joe Ricketts thing, Gothamist, et cetera. And what you just mentioned, community-based stuff. What if we created an app that was essentially standardized across all communities, but could be localized based on a sign-on to the community the person lives in? So they're pulling down data that is just relevant to that person, but it uses the same platform, sort of as a distribution or something like that.
Well, the guy who's sitting behind you has done something, the two guys that are sitting behind you have done something similar with some of the planning labs tools, but definitely getting more of those types of government information localized to your geographic boundary would be great. Open block. I'm gonna go to Tim first, and then maybe back to Ashlock.
I would like to see an improved feedback loop for reporting errors with data on the open data portal.
Do you have a specific way? Just
well, I mean, right now I don't. I mean, you can ask a question on the portal, and then that just disappears. The open data coordinators' names are not publicly available. That would be nice as a start. And then to be able to report an error and have them answer whether they can fix it or not.
I'm down with that. Back over here. I'm also noticing that there are a lot of men that are talking.
Well, Manhattan is kind of heading this way with the LoRaWAN deployment, though I don't think it's crystallized yet. But a resident should be able to say, hey, I think I have a problem. Either I'm in a sick building or there's a noise problem. And the city can say, oh, you think you have a problem? Here's a sensor, demonstrate it. It will be logged, and then we'll know what's going on.
So an IoT for like a 311 like extension of like a physical internet. I don't know how to explain that, like extending 311 to physical sensors to demonstrate problems. Yes.
This isn't necessarily an innovation, but one thing that I learned today was how much public libraries do for accessibility and education, and also how much they are not funded. And so I think just funding libraries should also be a priority.
Yeah, yes. I've lost my library for close to a year because they were tearing it down and building another one, and then it's going to turn into a cafe. You should take a look at the Greenpoint Library, because that's the future of apparently Brooklyn libraries. So it's an innovative thing. Okay, other hands. Where's the spirit? Oh, yes. Yeah.
I would like to see more data sets on the open data portal and better quality data in the existing data sets.
Can you elaborate on what type of quality you would be looking for?
I guess like just as an example, like if there's location or address information in a data set, having that be comprehensive and accurate and thorough, that sort of thing.
Can I add that GeoClient should eventually move to an open source system and should be completely on GitHub? And then the two people from an unknown agency are clapping vehemently. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, I learned a ton and really excited about BoardStat. That was really cool. I'd like to see the future of more predictive data and real-time data. A lot of it seems to be like based on like 1 year, and I'm still learning like the tools that are available, but I'd love to see, especially around like public safety and predicting like these crimes are happening here and connecting the data sources with like child safety and well-being and public safety.
Thank you. All right. Oh, yes.
I guess like one of the things is like I'm happy to see like all these open source tools like Pluto, I don't know, being moved to an open format and all the things we're doing here. But then it's like I know it's like if you cross the Hudson, like I don't know, like Jersey City or whatever, it's like I don't know, like you don't have data or anything, and it's like New York City, like I don't know, we exist in like greater context, so like I don't know, things like planning or whatever, it's like I don't know, at least with open source, like maybe you can make it more accessible to other governments outside of New York City or open data or like, I don't know, like, but I don't know, to like do more just beyond our boundaries, or share like more.
Yeah, yeah. Have our tools be able to be cross-Hudson, cross-channel. Right, like we have an 84.5, okay, the mayor proposed an $84.5 billion budget. Does that seem high to you? Do you, $84.5 billion. For that's the city budget. Yeah, the entire, so yeah, and there's 8.5 million people. So you start doing the math, and that's a lot of money per individual, right? There's billions of dollars that go into the city's IT infrastructure. And so just think about that. There are billions of dollars that flow into the IT infrastructure. And so how do we be able to use that capital to better assist the whole region operate in a better way? So, all right, cool. Well, who else has anything? Yeah, we're new.
Empowering more on the fact-based journalism, removing biases and fakeness from the news.
How can we advocate for that within government?
Basically, government should scrutinize the journalism pieces as well as encourage the use of open data towards the story lines that are coming out in the news.
Okay. Has some of these gotten more than others? Is there a deficiency in some of these? Accessible infrastructure. Nobody has any ideas on how to improve Link NYC? No. Let me go here.
I don't mean to hog the microphone, but I did think of this just before, and I actually got a card written up there. What if you use photography plus a 311 app plus something like Google Brain or any of these image identification platforms that are out there now to identify types of problems and geolocate them and all that, make it easier to actually submit a complaint about, say, a pothole. If we can visually identify a pothole with just a photo rather than requiring somebody to fill out the entire form, well, that lowers the access, lowers the level of engagement required to report it.
So hold on, Phil. If you have an example, hold on. I was
just going to say, San Francisco is kicking off a pilot to do that right now, and I'm happy to connect with other people who are working on that exact same problem.
Wouldn't it be awesome if bus lanes and bike lanes had some type of automatic enforcement in them, so that way? So yeah, wouldn't that be nice? So automatic enforcement, cameras that would track and make sure that buses had free right of way.
I've been part of the White House Commission on Education for Latinos, and I see a lot of the underserved communities, even the business community, that are not really into technology. I think they should make an effort to train, and also 50 plus, a lot of people, even if they're social workers, they're not good in computers. I spoke to the Commissioner of Technology, and I said, we need to work on that area, because the underserved communities, they don't know how to use an app sometimes. So servicing that community is important. I say this of experience. I have been a field service for 20-something years, and I have spoken to people that do not even know how to use a computer or that they have a computer. So we have to think of that also.
Great. Yeah. Yeah.
Just wanted to add to the infrastructure section. Infrastructure does not only mean streets and buses and cars and trains. That's a good part of it. But infrastructure also means the network behind the technology she's talking about. It's not just one person with a computer. They have to have a platform that they're working on, know what the platform is, and all the various parts that makes that useful. That's also infrastructure.
Yeah. Yeah. So digital literacy training, yeah, so not only what's in the browser or what's in the monitor, but the whole stack that goes all the way down to the electrical outlet. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
To follow up on that, something that's specific to New York is maybe working with communities undergoing rezonings so that the communities that are in the process of negotiating community benefits know what infrastructure to ask for, or know what things that they can, what sort of technological infrastructure they can ask for on a neighborhood level to either promote education and learning in the schools, or in addition to partnering with Link NYC, to have some sort of technological, advisement on community benefits, because a lot of times communities don't know what things that they can ask for to improve these types of services and access.
And Marie, can you talk about, you're on the community board?
I quit the community board.
And what type of services can communities ask for in the rezoning process?
Pretty much anything. I mean, in the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan, we had a multiple number of subgroups, from culture to education to parks to pretty much any topic you can think of was covered. However, given sort of the people participating, we don't often have somebody with civic tech knowledge or with any sort of technological experience or background to say, we don't only want, we don't only want the Esplanade fix, but we need monitoring for whatever. And these are the I can't think of something specific right now, but like when you're asking for updates in infrastructure or updates in even schools, like do people know to ask for, if you have a new school, what comes with that school to make sure that you have, if you want to, you could ask to create a hub, or you could ask for a tech hub in your community versus it being on, in another community. A lot of communities don't know what to even ask for to make sort of these things possible in their community. Say if you are a community and you want groups to come to do a hack night. Like I know in East Harlem, when we have community board meetings, we don't even have in some spaces you can hardly get Wi-Fi, right? So if you have a developer coming to say, and they're, you could be in another space and have a computer and look up and say, that's not true. You only did 12% of local hiring in your last job. You don't even have access to the internet to check what the developers or the city is representing to you. So things like that.
So it's like almost like a digital playbook for zoning here. All right, I'm gonna, yeah.
Say like when it comes to Link NYC, it's like maybe I'm paranoid, but I have like no like I don't know, no confidence that if I use it that there's like privacy or security or anything like that, or like I don't know, Big Brother government is collecting data about me. Like I don't know if I'm like illegal immigrant or something, I would be like very like worried and not trust it at all. And I don't know if like I don't know my concerns are valid or not. Like, but it's like I don't know. Like, yeah.
So greater transparency around the Internet of Things devices that are kind of around the city.
They provide like privacy or like I don't know.
Yeah. Did you?
They don't, and they should.
Yeah, every Link NYC device has cameras in it to ensure that the device isn't sabotaged in one way, shape, or another, which means that there's always cameras on the street. There are microphones that are in some of those Link NYC devices, and from what I've heard is that the Link NYC and Do It are exploring how they can release some of that data, because those are sensors that are out on the street, and figure out like how to release the noise quality data that Link NYC devices currently have, which is kind of scary because it's like, I didn't realize that there were microphones on those things that were turned on. That wasn't in the privacy policy.
So I was just really impressed to hear about the public engagement unit that the city has with Access NYC, and just like having actual boots on the ground to meet people where they are and help and find sort of what their needs are. So I think just like exploring more ideas like that and understanding that the kind of digital divide might not always be a matter of like providing more education and helping people get more digital, but it's also about like just being a person and human and meeting people in person sometimes. Like that's maybe the best option in many cases. So just recognizing where those potential exclusions are, and that there's going to have to be a lot of different solutions to meet people where they are.
Kind of like service design studies for every street team that's out there, or for every website that's out there, to figure out where are the barriers in service delivery and come up with plans and resources to essentially to reduce the friction. Like, yeah, it would be cool to have a service design studio in every single agency. That would be awesome. Cool. All right.
Regarding, as we move on with big data and data analytics, the various data sets that you're talking about in here, at what point does the city is going to implement a body of handling the security and privacy issues? Because a lot of this information is going to be public. The Internet of Things is going to expose a lot of data sets, and then what standardized systems are going to be implemented to safeguard that the data that is being distributed, it's distributed between the correct parties, and that the privacy and security of individuals' information is not compromised for third-party abuse.
So in our open data law, we already have a really good protections around personal identifiable information, to the extent that like 311 doesn't even publish the service request record. They anonymize it and then even the taxi TLC has gone through and started anonymizing data in a more protective way, so that way Chris Wong can't do his cool maps anymore. To that extent, we have really good protections in that. The city has introduced a chief cybersecurity officer who's a former captain from the U.S. Army who is part of the Cyber Command to ensure that all of our digital systems are even more protected. And yeah, so yeah, making sure to stay on them and they get the resources.
I know the city is putting a lot of effort, various agencies, into publishing open data and getting their data out there, but I don't necessarily know that they're being proactive about informing people that the data is out there. So like we put it on open data, great, if you go looking for it, you'll find it. But if you don't know, I think we need that education on what data we're collecting, what data is available, and even what data is and what you can do with it at an early age, like in the New York City schools.
Cool. Adrian Schmoker had, well, ooh, I don't know if this is supposed to be public. But every city agency is supposed to come up with a civic engagement plan where every open data coordinator is supposed to work with their agency to come up with a civic engagement strategy around their data. And that was part of the training that I was participating in for the last 2 days. And so there are going to be processes that ODCs, open data coordinators, are going to be like, agencies are going to be responsible to talk about their data and to be public about their data. But having, like, be more specific, like having training programs or like workshops, like clear curriculum, so that way it's not them just showing up and doing some type of tap dance around civic engagement, but it's just like, no, we're going to actually show you how to use our data and where our data is useful. Yeah.
So in the future, I guess I'm curious to see with the coming of 5G and how much that's going to change with the cell towers being everywhere, where that's going to be placed, and kind of the civic engagement with that process, and like the risk that the FCC has just published versus like the opportunity with that faster internet. I think that's going to be a community thing to discuss.
So explicitly civic engagement around the placement of 5G cell towers.
Yeah.
Does everybody understand what 5G is going to do to the city, or no? Do you want to talk a little bit? Do you want to talk about why that's a concern?
I'm not definitely not an expert, but early. There could be possible health implications. So there's been testing around on mice that it's causing brain tumors. So basically the electromagnetic frequencies is just a huge increase from what we have right now. So we want this faster internet, great, but the FCC, we can't really look to the FCC anymore to protect us. So what do we know? That's the risk. It's just these little towers going to be everywhere. So it's going to be producing, it's just a huge change with our infrastructure. And it's being tested right now in all these cities coming here. So it's a great opportunity. But I mean, do we trust these huge corporations to protect us? I don't know.
So 2 weeks ago, the city and state had a session where they were talking about the future of network infrastructure in the city. They were talking about 5G as being kind of the next step. So it's really expensive to lay fiber in New York City, right? How many of you have fiber at your home? Raise your hand. How many of you have fiber at your home right now? 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's great. So the 5G is advertised as fiber-like speed. The catch is that they're micro cell towers, so they're much smaller towers, and that means that they have to lay fiber to the tower, right? And then they're able to do essentially like a Wi-Fi hotspot, gigabit hotspot, but gigabit hotspots that can handle hundreds, if not thousands, of people on them. And the radio frequency of that is kind of dangerous because it is it's microwave level, right? It's a very intense radio frequency, and to get the type of saturation that we have now with our LTE and 4G means that there's going to be 2 to 3 times as many cell towers in the city, right? So you walk around the city, you see cell towers everywhere, right? Well, imagine 2 to 3 times the size, because these radio waves are shorter, and you have to build them in a more dense environment, which means that then you're exposed to more EF, and they're really not sure about exactly what that EF does to the body completely.
There's also a project in the NYC Tech Meetup group right now talking about mesh networks. That kind of overlaps with that, and nobody's really talking a whole lot about it.
Yeah, more Wi-Fi mesh. There were a few other people that have promoted the NYC mesh communities.
Is there a time when we, the people, or we, the citizens, can say, here's what we want to do. We don't want to go any further at this point. It's like we have to accept everything. Even if you understand it, doesn't mean you should accept it. There's a cost to the free. There's a cost to the speed. And I don't think we understand that fully. We should, because we've had 30, 40 years of it. And yet we seem to just go by us. We're going to take the 5G or the 5T or the 5 what have you, without even batting an eyelid. And we say, whatever happened?
I think to the participants' point is that they're asking for more civic engagement around the placement and more awareness around the potential health hazards of the implementation. That's part of the conversation. So I want to try to get to some new voices, because otherwise I'm sure several of us could be here for several hours talking about all these things. Yeah? Huh? Yeah? How we doing? How we doing? How we doing? We doing good? We doing good? Did we fill this in significantly from where we were beforehand? Yeah. Okay, here are some questions for industry, employment, and economic mobility. And we're running out of time, so Ben pointed out that we have 10 minutes left of this. How can we prepare for a transitioning workforce, and how can technology optimize access to jobs? I know, yes.
It's the question regarding industry, employment, and economic mobility. Is it just specifically to the seminars and the hack halls upstairs, or is it something that was never addressed that could be introduced as part of the element or item that could be added to the economic and mobility, for example? Because I'm thinking of what she mentioned. She mentioned that there is a sector in our society, either the middle or late baby boomers, who are basically either out of a job or currently in a position that their jobs will be terminating soon. So consequently, these individuals do have college degrees. Some of them are, it's a educated workforce. So it's the retraining process that she talked about. Is the industry, employment, and economic mobility is providing a platform or any kind of education and long-term learning processes that would include and bring in those individuals into the workforce. Because, and I do see that there is a possibility of various problems coming into play. One is in the Department of Labor, that is the enforcement of the probability of those individuals who are of age 50 or beyond and their capability of finding work. And there is then the enforcement mechanisms that come with that. But in terms of what the city can do to bring in those individuals for retraining, recertification, and to provide the capabilities for those individuals to be able to be, yet again, incorporated, so then you have economic mobility in that aspect.
Now, I think to the answer your question is yes. Yes. That's what this section, all those things, to summarize ideas, programs that ensure workforce development for people over the age of 50, digital literacy courses for an aging population, consideration of the infrastructure tools and services for an aging population. Like, my parents can't use two-factor authentication, so let's make sure that government services don't do two-factor authentication if you need to sign in for those types of services. Yeah. Yep. You want, no? Okay. Huh? Oh, okay. Oh, Okay. Well, we hope you can join us for a session of the People's Roadmap. I've just been told that we actually have to clear everyone out by 6:30. That is slightly different than what we were told beforehand. So, yeah. So, no. That applause is amplified to everyone who's wearing a blue shirt today. So thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Irina, Julia, and Ben for scribing this out. We are genuinely going to incorporate these ideas. It's actually part of the roadmap team. If you're interested in volunteering for these different roadmaps, we'd love to hear you. We're going to start collecting some things. I see some left behinds for a lost and found. Thank you, Internet. Thank you, Microsoft, Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, Fund for the City of New York, and Gail Brewer for sponsoring this year's School of Data. Bye.